Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our January Directors Meeting. We're so glad that so many of you are here, and we do recognize that some of our directors are up at the Capitol today, joining in Capitol Charter Day on the Hill with the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. So for those who are not here with us, then we wish them well. Hope it's a successful day at the Capitol. And if you're catching us on the recording later, we missed you, and we will see you in February. So without further ado, we will get started here. We do have our welcome announcement and our State Charter School Board report with our Executive Director, Jennifer Lambert. So we will turn the time over to her.
Thank you, everyone. And in case you hear a little bit of noise in the background, there's some construction going here. So I'm going to try and make this short so it doesn't annoy all of you. And hopefully you can't hear it too much. At the moment, they're a little quieter, but still drilling. So that's always fun. But welcome to January. I hope that you all had a wonderful holiday break and we're actually able to take a break. So let's go ahead and get started to some of our announcements. I believe the first one is the Charter Employee of the Month. I want to congratulate Tammy Israelison. And is she here today? Was she able to come?
She is here.
Right here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Tammy, I want to give you a personal thank you for all that you do. Tammy, so that you know that she works for Freedom Preparatory Academy. She's at in their Provo Elementary campus, and she is their office manager. And she, as you all know, office managers are kind of like the heart of the school, and she is a really great individual in their organization. She is a cheerleader. She's very responsive and happy. Do you have anything to add? I can't see who's with you, Tammy.
I don't have much of
is
a
it your principal that's with you?
I'm standing in for Lynn today, so she's at Charter on the Hill, but I don't have much of a voice. But yes, Tammy is I love the line that says the answer to almost any question is go ask Tammy. And everybody in the whole organization knows that she's really the one that holds our schools together. So we are very, very grateful for her.
Thank you. And Tammy, again, thank you. Congratulations. We'll have a certificate and a little Amazon gift card that we will mail to you. I know it doesn't make up for all that you put into the school, but hopefully this acknowledgement, you can feel some of our appreciation for what you do. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. This is a great place to work.
Wonderful. Well, with that wonderful news, I don't think I can top it, but I'm going to keep trying. We've approved a new charter school. It's called Elevated Charter School. It was approved by the State Charter School Board just a couple of weeks ago in their January board meeting. This is an online school, and they have some unique approaches in what they want to do with online. And we felt that with the move to doing a lot of remote and some of the demand there, that this is a good opportunity to expand choice here in the Utah charter world. So congratulations to them. And I hope that you'll be able to get a chance to welcome them in the future. And then I believe we have one more thing. Is that correct, Marie? I just wanted to give you some feedback. I know that Chair Bowles has mentioned this in another meeting that I would give you an update. I just want to let you know that we are listening to you and we want to meet your needs. And we hope that these director meetings are valuable, and we want to make sure that they remain to be valuable. And so we are open to feedback. And Marie did a survey, as some of you may remember participating, but I believe this was done at the end of last year. But it was to ask, how do you want to continue with these meetings? And the majority that responded, the vast majority, I don't know, 65% is vast, but we'll call it, but to continue as have been done. And if you add then the other 19% in person with recordings, which is what we do, so those two together, that's what we're going to continue doing. I know that there's a couple of you that would like to have more in-person meetings. For right now, we're having better attendance with being able to have them here online. It is really hard to do the mix when you have some people in person and some people online. As you know, one of those groups, and it's usually those online, gets kind of left out. And so it just doesn't work as well. And then also having a recording is easier when it is online. And I do know that there's a number of people who access the recording after the fact. And when you have emergencies that pop up, I know that you probably really appreciate that. So that's what we're going to continue to do. Those of you who wanted the recording only, good news, you can access it as if it was the recording only. You don't have to attend in person unless you don't have the opportunity to ask questions. That is true. And then those of you who just want the links to pertinent info, let me direct you to our newsletter. So every month, Marie also sends out a newsletter, and it does have the pertinent info in there. You, again, aren't able to ask questions or hear a little more about it, but you can always get the, kind of the things, the main pieces in the newsletter. So just wanted to let you know about that. And then I lied. There's one more thing. As my staff knows, I'm really good at adding one more thing, but we don't have a slide deck for this, but I just wanted to give you a quick update on the legislative session. As you probably have heard, the House Bill 215, which is mixing, adding extra funding for teacher salaries, along with what is called the Utah Fit Scholarship. Some people refer to that as vouchers, but that's kind of the big hot topic at the moment. There are other education bills, believe it or not, but that's kind of the big hot topic. As you probably know, it did pass the House on Friday. It is going to be heard in the Senate Education Committee today at 2 p.m. And in case, I do know that they did send out a quick news release, but this morning, the Board of Education did vote to take a position of opposition to the bill. So that's the main piece going on in the legislature. If you have any questions, I can try to answer them. Otherwise, we'll just continue on with our meeting. Wonderful.
Jennifer, sorry, I have a quick question. Did you say House Bill 215 or Senate Bill?
Yes.
House Bill, right?
Yes,
I want to
it
make sure I
is.
know what I'm following. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, it's being run by Representative Perucci. I apologize if I mispronounce her name. And then the Senate sponsor is Cullimore.
And Jennifer, has the State Charter School Board taken a position on this?
The State Charter School Board has not met since the legislature has started. And so we haven't even discussed any of the bills or taken a position on any of them. As you probably can tell, this bill is being fast-tracked. And so I don't know if there will even be an opportunity for the State Charter School Board to weigh in before the votes are taken on it.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I will turn the time back to Marie, and hopefully the drilling wasn't too bad.
I don't think the drilling was noticeable at all. So thank you, Director Lambert. All right, well, perfect. Well, next we have up just a few quick announcements about some upcoming training. So first we have Katie Hurst here from EdDirection. So I will turn the time over to her to share about an upcoming opportunity for our teachers and administrators. So Katie, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm going to go talk about just really briefly a great opportunity for charter seminars. And for those of you who haven't heard about charter seminars, I'm just going to do a quick update on what they are. Charter seminars is a great way to invite charter school leaders and teachers from across the entire state to come together, to talk, to learn together, to share what they've been doing in their schools, and to increase and improve their instructional practices. This year, we've been focusing on increasing academic rigor in our classrooms. Through doing that, we're trying to touch on 4 big main things. 1, define what rigor is and what is the relationship that has with student achievement across our schools. 2, we want to explore rigor through questioning. How can we increase academic rigor through questioning, through very evidence-based strategies? And then one of the third things is formative assessments. How can we use formative assessments to track our progress with increasing academic rigor? And how can we adapt and adjust our instruction in real time? And the last piece of it is we really want to provide a time and a space for all of the teachers and school leaders to be able to collaborate together, to problem solve and to refine their practices and increase that academic rigor in their classrooms. We do this through providing 4 main sessions. We've already completed 2 of those sessions and we have 2 more to come. So those 4 sessions are professional learning. Then we did a consultancy where we came with a problem of practice for teachers and school leaders to come together and group up what problems or practices they may be experiencing and to brainstorm and collaborate some great ways that they might address those challenges. And the 2 that we have coming up are the observations and a discussion panel and some hours of operation. So in that professional learning, we connected with educators across the state and we explored what is rigorous instruction and how can we build a better understanding and implement strategies through questioning. And then the last part we touched on was considering how to use this formative assessment and adapt our instruction in real time. And the great news is if you missed that and you want to see it, we have it recorded. So just reach out to myself or Marie and we'll be happy to share that recording with you guys so you can see that. And then the second one, like I said, was the consultancy that we already did, where we came together around problems of practice and we collaborated to create ways that we can face those challenges. Now, we're really excited because our next session is upcoming in March and we'll have a specific date to be determined, but we'll send that out super quick. So check your emails from Marie. She'll have that soon and we'll be sending that out. But this is a great opportunity to come and see educators, some very high quality educators, putting these practices in their classrooms. So you're going to see them using high rigor instruction through questioning and how they're addressing that using those formative assessments and adapting their instruction in real time. And then after we're watching those videos and those observations, we'll have the opportunity to ask questions and discuss strategies together in a panel discussion of how we can use those with that. And if you weren't able to attend our first 2 sessions, please still come to the 3rd session. There's no previous attendance required to come to these ones. You're welcome to jump in at any point. And then our last session will be in March as well. And there will be some office hours where you're able to come together and collaborate, bring your action plans, bring your lesson plans, and talk about, hey, here's what I want to do. How does that sound to you? Or I'm thinking about doing this and I could really use some advice of how I can make it better, and collaborate with other charter school teachers and school leaders across the state in a way to maximize student learning in your classrooms. So again, we had their 4 sessions and I'm just going to pause there and see if are there any questions or comments, concerns that I can answer before I pass the time back to Marie. Okay, well, if you do have any questions, reach out to myself or Marie. Our contact information is on the screen. And with that, Marie, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Katie. That looks great. We're so excited. Please make sure to share with your teachers, and we hope that they get excited too, and we'll look forward to joining with us. All right, well, moving right ahead, I don't see Shannon here and haven't received anything on upcoming UAPCS trainings, so I'm sure they'll plan to email you with what they have coming up and keep you informed that way. Next, we do have James Martin here. He is the USBE School Improvement Specialist, and he's going to be talking TSI, CSI, and U. So we will turn the time over to James for his presentation.
Hello, Marie and everyone else. Thank you for having us. I represent the Center for Continuous School Improvement at the Utah State Board of Education. It's a relatively new center within USBE that is here to support school improvement initiatives throughout the state and to provide more technical support to schools that are going through improvement. So I am going to share my screen so that you can see the presentation that we put together. So my colleagues and I have all collaborated on this to be able to share with you a little bit about TSI and CSI, and then there will be some time for some questions toward the end. So hopefully by the end of today, you'll be able to explain the intent and key requirements of TSI under Every Student Succeeds. That includes identification and exit processes. We hope you'll be able to find, analyze, and plan for student group improvement using TSI data on the USBE website. Hopefully you'll be able to articulate timelines and processes of CSI under ESSA and clarify exit criteria and the process and administrative rule if schools don't meet exit criteria. You're all seeing my screen, right? Can anybody
Yeah,
give me
James,
a
it looks
thumbs up?
great.
Okay, great. All right, good. Just want to make sure I'm not talking. I've done that before. So, all right. So this is the school improvement pieces that are under ESSA. There's low graduation, comprehensive support and improvement. There's low performance, comprehensive support and improvement. And then there's targeted support and improvement, TSI, which we're going to talk about first. But we are driven by Utah's ESSA state plan, and I will make this PowerPoint available because there are some active links in here so that you can actually go to the ESSA state plan and see what it says. So in ESSA, our ESSA plan, to the federal government, we have accountability mapped out by elementary and middle. Those are lumped together, and then also high school. So the accountability indicator points for elementary and middle include achievement. So a school has 56 possible points for achievement every year, and these are based on RISE. Growth also accounts for 56 points, so those are weighted equal. And EL progress gets 13 points. This is the only one that is not calculated from RISE. This comes from WIDA progress. And then there's growth of the lowest performing 25%. So the lowest performing 25% at your school on that particular year's assessment and the growth of those students from one year to the next. So a total of 150 points are possible. You may not have all of these indicators. For example, if you don't have at least 10 English language learners in a student group, you wouldn't get this EL progress. So you have to have at least 10 students in a student group to be counted towards this accountability. And there is a link to the accountability technical manual, which will give you some more details on how these calculations are done. There's also accountability indicator points for high schools. So there's achievement, growth, EL progress, and growth of the lowest 25%, just like in elementary and middle. There's also post-secondary readiness, which we'll talk a little bit about when we get there. Total of 225 points for high schools. So in the achievement indicator for a student group, there, like I said, are 56 points possible, which accounts for 37% of the points for elementary and 25% for high school. About 18 points, between 18 and 19 points comes from language arts, 18 points come from math, and 18 points come from science. So it's important to focus on all three of those areas when you're designing your school improvement plans. Growth of the lowest 25% is worth 25 points. So that accounts for 17% of the elementary total and 11% of the high school total. And the growth indicator is worth 56 points. So this is for all students who take the test. If they have another RISE test to compare it to. So your third graders wouldn't be calculated into this growth indicator because they don't have a second grade RISE. So it would be fourth grade and above. And growth is calculated based on where the student started. So they have a SGP, student growth, an SGT, a student growth target based upon where they start. So there's these bins of performance that students are placed in, and then an appropriate student growth target is determined based on where the student is beginning. And then if the student made the progress that was expected, they would get anywhere from a point to quarter of a point to no point. So it just sort of depends on where they're starting, like I said, and where they end up. And then English Learner Progress Indicator, this is the one that uses WIDA access. WIDA is not a measure of proficiency as far as the core is concerned. It measures academic language development and proficiency in English. And it is also based on growth from one WIDA to the next, and accounts for 9% of the elementary points and 6% of the high school points. And then post-secondary readiness for high school, 75 points are possible. 25 points come from the graduation rate, 25 points come from ACT, and 25 points come from readiness coursework, such as CTE, AP courses, that sort of thing. So a school is identified for TSI if for 2 consecutive years, any of the student groups fall below the percentage of points associated with the lowest performing 5% of schools in the state's accountability system. And that's a real mouthful. So we have a diagram to help kind of unpack that. So basically every single year we run the accountability system for all schools and LEAs, and then we rank order the schools. And so, you know, the school that has the highest amount of points all the way down to the school that has the lowest amount of points. We set a mark of where 5%, the lowest 5% are. From there, we use that mark as a cut score. So every school that's in the lowest 5% is considered CSI low performance, would be falling into that category. But if there's any student group that also would constitute CSI in that lowest 5% on its own, that student group is flagged as a potential TSI. But it takes 2 years of that flagging for a school to end up being TSI. So we have several different groups of TSI. We have, groups can end up in TSI based upon economically disadvantaged. So these are the student groups that you might see. Students with disabilities, students who are identified as English learners, and then students by major racial and ethnic categories. And like I said, you wouldn't have all of these student groups necessarily, or you might, depending on the demographics of your school. TSI schools are identified annually, but they weren't identified in 2020 or 2021 because of the pandemic. And targeted support and improvement, or TSI, is really at the discretion of the LEA. So we put it into the hands of the LEA, and we are here as a center to provide support in conducting needs assessments or root cause analysis or writing a school improvement plan. But we don't ask for any of those plans to be turned in. You don't have to have a comprehensive needs assessment, a certain comprehensive needs assessment. You don't have to have a continuous improvement expert, which is required under some other models of improvement. So yes, that's TSI. And there are currently 521 schools in TSI as of the latest round of data, and 1,098 TSI groups identified. You can tell that 40% come from students with disabilities. That's the highest student group represented. And I like to look at it this way, like even though there are 40% groups that are students with disabilities, there are 60% of groups of students with disabilities that aren't in TSI. So So that's good news and something maybe we can learn from. 27% are multilingual learners, and then on down the list. So to exit from targeted support and improvement, schools have to be above that 5% cut for 2 years consecutively within 4 years. So Title I schools that don't exit after 4 years become CSI, are identified then for CSI. And the lowest 5% of schools is recalculated annually. So I can't ever tell you what the cut score is going to be. It fluctuates from year to year, although for the last 5 years, it has been pretty constant. It's ranged anywhere from about 35% of the points to 40% of the points. And I'll show you a little bit more here. So in 2017-18, that was the first cohort. It was based upon, excuse me, sorry, I have dogs and they're barking. The first cohort was from 2017 and 18, and it was based on data from 2017 and 18. So schools that are in this cohort were below the 5% threshold, or the student groups were below the 5% threshold for 2017 and 2018 data. And then we had one round of information about how they were performing in year one. So we look every single year to see if that student group is above that cut line or below that cut line. And then we had a little bit of an interruption, a little bit with the pandemic, and weren't able to start collecting data again until 2021 and 2000. Well, we had some data in 2021. It's not being used for exit purposes for TSI exit. So the first additional year of exit information that we had was in 2022, so this last spring. And so some schools were, and some student groups were able to exit from TSI because they had 2 consecutive years. 2019 and 2022 are considered consecutive years for the purposes of TSI in Utah because of the pandemic. So these, this cohort will have until 2024 to exit from TSI. So you can kind of see how this works as far as TSI is concerned. So if a school had students with disabilities as a student group and they were part of that first cohort, if the group was below the 5% in 2019, that's the X. Below the 5% in 2022, that's the other X. Above the 5% in 2023, that's the check, the green check, and above in 2024, this is projecting into the future, of course, because we aren't there yet, but let's just say that it was another check, then that school would exit from TSI status. Whereas here with this ELL student group, you can see that in 2019, they were above the 5%. In 2022, they were below the 5%. In 2023, again, projecting above the 5% cut. And in 2024, below the 5% cut. This student group would not exit from TSI, even though they've had 2 years of above the 5%, because it requires 2 consecutive years of above the 5%. And if the school was Title I, then that school would become CSI. So hopefully that makes sense, but we can talk a little bit more about that. If anybody has any questions as we go, feel free to shout out, or I'm not able to see the chat either. So hopefully if somebody throws something in the chat, somebody can let me know. Also, we have the
I'm monitoring chat for you. There's nothing in chat right now.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So we also had a cohort in 2018-19 based upon data from 2018 and 19. And then they didn't get any feedback until just this last year, 2021-22, when we were able to have some exit data to share, which I shared with you. That was because of the pandemic, and we did not use 2021 data for exit. So this cohort has been pushed to 2025 for exit. So it has all those years available to exit, but they could exit sooner. So for example, here is economically disadvantaged student group on the 3rd row. I guess it's the 4th row after the heading. So in year 1, they were above the 5%. In year 2, they were above the 5%. And so they exit right there. It doesn't matter what happened in year 3 or year 4 because they would no longer be in TSI. Another thing that has happened recently, which we have been accounting for as a center, is that some student groups have fallen below the 10 threshold. They immediately drop off TSI designation, and it's just kind of like starting over. So if that group were to go above 10 again, at some point they could be reconsidered for TSI, but if they are identified for TSI and then drop below that threshold of 10 required, we would just drop them from the list. Okay, so that is about TSI. What questions do you have on TSI before I dive into CSI? Okay, well, if you think of any, we'll come back around. So comprehensive support and improvement, there are actually 2 pathways to get into CSI. Schools can be identified every 4 years as a result of being in the lowest 5% of Title I schools averaged over 3 years. So I mentioned that lowest 5% being the mark for CSI. A school wouldn't go into CSI after just 1 year. It would be an average of 3 years. Another pathway is, as I mentioned, schools that are TSI that are also Title I and that don't exit after 4 years, they are identified as CSI low performance. And then to exit from CSI, a school has to perform above the lowest 15% of Title I schools in the 3rd year after identification. So if it happens 1st year, 2nd year, that's not considered where it needs to be. It has to be 3rd year, and that's really from a sustainability standpoint. So we're really looking at not some, fast change that isn't able to be sustained over a longer period of time. We're looking for, hopefully, these schools are making some significant changes, some transformative changes that will help those changes to really stick. And then we would see that even into the 3rd year. There's also a CSI low graduation identification. So these schools are identified every 4 years. This would apply obviously to high schools due to a 3-year average graduation rate that's less than or equal to 67%. So the way to exit for these CSI low graduation schools is to be above 67% for the 2nd and 3rd year after which the school is identified. So again, it's getting to that sustainability, really wanting it to get above that 67% and stay above that 67% so that we can feel secure that the school has the resources that it needs to be able to be successful in the long term. So here's the CSI cohort low performance timeline. So this was an identification and planning year. So schools were identified for CSI. If you didn't hear that you were a CSI school, then you're not, because the department would have reached out to you and had a conversation about that. In 2023-24 will be year 1 implementation. All the way through to year 3 implementation. And then schools that are not able to exit after that point go into more rigorous interventions. There's a part of improvement that's called more rigorous interventions, and it's additional tools that are provided to the school to help them to be successful. And then here's the low graduation rate timeline. So again, this is an identification and planning year. Based upon 2021 graduates, then 2023 and 24 is year 1, 2024 and 2025 is year 2, 2025-26 year 3, and then schools that are not able to exit by year 3 will have some more rigorous interventions. I do want to mention also that the Utah State ESSA plan is being revised. In fact, it was revised and it was submitted to the federal government, the federal government of Federal Department of Education, sorry, U.S. Department of Education. And so that will be reviewed, and it could change some things that I'm talking about here. Like, for example, one of the elements in the revised plan is that to exit from TSI, a student group would only need to be above that 5% for 1 year rather than 2 years consecutively, which would make a huge difference for some of our schools. And so we won't know about that until we hear back from the federal government about their approval of the plan, which probably won't be until fall at the very soonest, but we will keep you informed about any changes that are coming from that.
James,
This
there's
is the
a question in the chat.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, the question says this is a change from another conversation, and they want to confirm that only after the third year a school can exit. And so they're asking, is this correct?
So, yeah, for the low graduation, is that the question? Or low performance?
I think the low performance.
Okay, so yes, for both low performance and low graduation, it has to be after that third year because it has to be, that has to be when the school is above the lowest 15%. And in the case of the low grad, they have to be above that 67% in years 2 and 3. So yeah, you would have to be in CSI for the full duration of time in order to be able to exit. So they would be monitoring the data and giving feedback and helping along the way. But ultimately, as far as exiting is concerned, they're really going to look at that last data point. Great question. And also involved in CSI are some additional resources, which I mentioned. They do have access to individuals to come in, consultants to come in and help with the comprehensive needs assessment and root cause analysis. There's also monies that are available for a continuous improvement expert to come in and assist with the writing of the school improvement plan and the implementation of the school improvement plan. So TSI really doesn't have many resources attached to it other than the contributions of our center, which is why we've been created to provide support to TSI schools. So we're happy to come out and help with any of those things. But CSI schools formally have some additional resources available so that these consultants can be brought in and used as a support. So this is our Center for Continuous School Improvement. Our supervisor is Tracy Vandeventer, and we have Janice Siegmiller. She's actually in charge of low graduation, and Heather Newell in charge of low performance for CSI. And then I work with Greg Fern as my colleague for TSI. And for non-TSI schools, it's really important for exiting as well within 4 years, but there's nothing in federal law that says that those schools become CSI. We do have some state legislation, state statute that says that schools will be identified for springboard, I believe, if they're in the lowest 5% of non-Title I schools. And that will start, I believe in 2026, excuse me. And there's also Elevate schools, and there will be an Elevate cycle coming up again. There's already 6 Elevate schools in the process, and it's by application and interest only. So if schools that are TSI that are not Title I want to get involved in Elevate, it comes with additional funds, some continuous improvement experts, just some additional resources that can be used to leverage the work being done at the school. So you would want to watch for an email from Dr. Fern about Elevate, or you can reach out to him and get some information. He's very responsive to email about if you have any questions about Elevate, which again is an optional program that schools can go through who are TSI and non-Title I if they have an interest in getting some additional resources. What questions do you have? I have 5 more minutes left of my 30 minutes, but happy to give it back to the agenda if there aren't any questions.
I do have a question, Dr. Martin. You mentioned that the CSI TSI, because of COVID, that was moved forward a year or two. I didn't catch the exact time on the slide. Is that right?
Yeah, so schools that were identified in 2018, they would have typically, their 4 years would have been up about now. So that's been pushed forward to 2024. I did mention that, so 2021 data was not used for exit purposes, but it was used for identification purposes. That was by the decision of our APEC committee at the state. So they needed 2 consecutive years of data to be able to identify a new round of TSI groups. And so 2021 and 2022 were used in combination to make those determinations. So we do have a new cohort of TSI schools this year, which again, those schools have been informed. That the data that I presented was the latest data on how many schools are TSI and how many student groups we have. there's a lot. So if you're in a TSI school, you're in good company. So
My second question is, so that sort of skip of the COVID years was done for TSI. Was that part of that was not done for CSI to identify CSI schools? Did they also use 21, 22 data? And just obviously we didn't have 20 data. So is that the same process for identifying CSI as you did TSI?
I believe so. I think it was taken off of a 3-year average, and they used some skip growth calculations to go from 2019 to 2021 and then 2022 to identify the lowest 5% on average.
Was there any consideration to the idea that it's obviously not the same student group, obviously from 19 to 21, in the sense of there's a good year and a half of different students all the way around. Is there any consideration to that in identifying any schools that were borderline? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, there are different students, and some of the students have moved on. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that gets brought up a lot. You know, sometimes we're comparing apples to oranges because we're not talking about the same students necessarily.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a good question. Let me do a little bit of digging around on it and see what the APAC committee has had to say about that, because I think that's a very valid point you bring up.
Thank you.
Okay, well, the Center for Continuous School Improvement is happy to be a resource for you. We're working with some schools already out in the field, and we love going out into schools and spending time being a thought partner. We're not experts, but we are good listeners, and we try to really just be a helping hand in what the school's already doing. I know that you're already doing so many successful, wonderful things, and so it's just really about finding those wonderful things and building on them. And so please reach out if you have any questions or would like for us to come out and visit, and we're happy to help out.
All right, thank you, James. We appreciate you being here and giving us that presentation today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I wanted to mention just one more thing, that I will send this PowerPoint to you, Marie, if it's possible to get it out to everybody. And we
Yeah,
also
I'd be
have
happy to do that.
we also have the latest list of TSI designations, all the student groups in the state. So you'll be able to see where all of your groups fell in relation to that lowest 5%, and make some plans for the future based on that. So I'll also include that with the email.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
We'll see ya. All right. Well, moving ahead with our agenda, we have Kara Hetrick here. And Kara is going to be talking about the implementation of HB 117. So we will turn the time over to Kara. Kara, I believe you are muted.
Oh, yes, thanks. All right. I'm Kara. I'm gonna try to share my screen here and let you all know a little bit more about this program. Let me see, just one sec. Sorry about this. Okay, well, maybe I'm not going to share my screen because I'm having a little bit of a problem with it. But that's all right. Let me see, just one second. I apologize. Okay, great. So I'm Kara. I'm the new program manager of the Safe at Home Address Confidentiality Program. And we're housed within the Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what the program does, give a little bit of background, and how state and local government agencies and schools will be impacted by the program. And then I have time for questions or concerns, and also I'll share my contact information. So if you'd like to ask it in the meeting, that's great. Or if you'd like to get in touch with me individually later, that will work too. So a little bit of background. HB 117 was passed last year, 2022, and created this program. And the purpose is to protect the residential addresses of victims of domestic violence, stalking, and sexual assault from perpetrators who may still pose a threat to victims. The program's meant to be just one tool really as part of a more holistic, larger safety plan. And it's specifically for folks who have recently moved or are moving to an address unknown by a perpetrator. And the Safe at Home program, it hasn't launched yet, but we anticipate it is months away from going live. My hope is that we will have it live by the end of this year. So I'm trying to kind of spread the word early to folks who may be impacted by it so that, first of all, I understand concerns before we get the program implemented, and we can just do it in the best possible way. So we'll provide victims' addresses in a couple of ways. Once a victim's in the Safe at Home program, then the program participant will receive an assigned address that they can use in place of their actual residential address. That assigned address will be the same for all program participants, and we don't have the exact details of this worked out, but most likely that assigned address will be a state office building's address. And then under the law, all state and local government entities are required to use the assigned address, not the actual residential address, in all records and for communication purposes. And program participants can receive mail at that assigned address, and we'll forward it on to them to their actual residential address free of charge. So these two things provide protection of a program participant's address in a few important ways. Because government entities are required to use the assigned address, the driver license division will use that assigned address on their driver's license. So program participants, if they need to show their license for any reason, won't have their actual residential address exposed. And then also, participants registering children for schools with residential location requirements won't give their actual residential address to the school. The school will contact our program and ask if they're in the right district and right school, and we'll look, confirm that the person is a program participant and say, yes, they're in the right place and they're a program participant, and that's the end of the information. And then the school should use the assigned address for all student records, and for any mailed communication, it should be going to that assigned address and we'll forward it on. And our program will have those actual residential addresses, of course, because we need to be able to forward the mail to the right place, and we'll have that information extremely tightly controlled. So it'll be in a database that isn't shared with any other state organization, and we're not subject to grandma requests for that information. So both of those things are intended to keep the actual residential address of victims as protected as we possibly can in as many places as we possibly can. People who are eligible for the program, again, victims of domestic violence, stalking, human trafficking, and sexual assault, who have reason to believe they may be in danger if their perpetrator knew their actual residential address, and are either living at an address unknown by the perpetrator, have moved within the last 90 days to an address unknown, or are moving in the next upcoming 90 days. And applicants are required to work with an application assistant, which those people will be folks already doing victim advocacy work in the community. And the purpose of that isn't to set up a barrier, but it's to make sure that victims are working with a victim advocate, because again, this is one tool as part of a safety plan, but this is definitely no substitute for working with a victim advocate and coming up with a comprehensive safety plan. So just some details about program participation. Program participants are enrolled for 4 years and then are eligible to renew for as long as they feel like the program will be beneficial to them. They can withdraw anytime they'd like to formally. And of course, also, I mean, program participants, they can withdraw formally, but they are people who have the power to disclose their address to anyone at any time, and that's beyond our control. So program participants will receive a card with their name on it, with our program contact information, and with an authorization number that they'll show to government agencies, schools, etc., that says, you know, okay, I'm Kara, I'm a participant in this program. If you have questions, you contact this program at this number. And then I think once we're up and running, a lot of the work that our office will be doing is responding to inquiries and questions and confusion about the program, because it won't be huge, so it isn't something that people are going to be seeing every single day. I mean, unless perhaps it's the driver license division will be pretty familiar with it. There are certain entities that will be very familiar, and many that, you know, I mean, a school might run across it once or twice. So yeah, but the only thing they need to show is that program participant card. And they're required to notify us if they have a change of address, change of phone number, change of name, because obviously we can't get their mail to them if we don't have their address. And they'll be removed from the program if they fail to update that contact information. So if their mail starts coming back undeliverable and their phone's disconnected, we'll take them out of the program. And then another important thing for government agencies and schools to know is program participants can request that any records within the 90 days prior to program participation can have their residential address redacted. So that's just one more thing to be aware of. So just to reiterate the ways that schools will be impacted and the requirements of the legislation, schools and all state and local government entities must accept the assigned address, which is that fake address that will probably be a state office building, as the residential address for students and families who are program participants. And they need to use the assigned address for any mailed communication and also any records. And if requested, the program participant's residential address needs to be redacted from any records created 90 days prior to program participation. I do want to emphasize, though, if there are any questions at any time, again, once the program's up and running, I think a lot of what our office's job will be is responding to inquiries and responding if there's cases of confusion with government records or communication, et cetera. So please, get in touch if there are questions. I hope people will feel free to do that. And again, it isn't up and live yet. I'm hopeful that we'll be up and running by the end of this year. And as I mentioned, we're hoping as many people as possibly can benefit will participate. But realistically, especially as we're getting started, this is going to be a relatively small program that you won't be running into constantly right away or bombarded with. If anyone has questions or concerns, I'm happy to try to answer them now, or also feel free to get in touch with me separately, and I will type my information in the chat since I don't have the presentation going. Yeah, any questions?
I have a quick question for you.
Mhm.
Kara, is DCFS going to be a part of this process for children that are being removed from the home so parents don't know where they are?
Yeah, so we're working with DCFS, and I think a lot of different agencies. Honestly, the more I get into it, the more I realize kind of how complex it is. But I'm working with DCFS to kind of understand the different ways this will interact with them, because there are exceptions to this. There just are things where a government entity has to know the actual physical location. And I think some DCFS instances, that's true. I think for things like parolees, if there's a parolee on, who's a program participant and their parole officer has to do home visits, obviously they need that address, that true address, but kind of trying then to keep it as protected as possible. So even like voter registration is an example of, in order to get someone in the right precinct and all of that, the county clerks will need the actual residential address. And so they're coming up with a separate policy where those addresses are stored separately in records, they're protected records. It's only a very limited number of people who have access to that. And so with some kind of case management things like that might be coming through DCFS, we might have a similar situation where that record needs to kind of be extra protected. And then also that information needs to be destroyed as soon as it's no longer being used. Are family rights terminated? How do we get around records FERPA issues? Well, so I might need to know a little bit more information about FERPA issues. Because could that assigned address be used, I guess is my question. And also if we should take this conversation offline, please let me know. Sorry, Brett, am I looking at Ames team? Brett was where that question came from, I think.
Yep. We're still obligated for parents that want records to give them records. So does this take away their rights?
No. So, and actually another thing that we can do is help facilitate the transfer of records from one school to another, if that in any way presents a problem. But no, they would be able to request any records. Do you mean like possibly a non-custodial parent or?
No, the
or like a-
custodial parent still can access, a non-custodial parent that has joint tenantship can still request records. How do we get around that if you're saying we can't provide any information then?
So you can provide any information, but it would be with that assigned address, this fake address. But so it doesn't prevent you from giving out that assigned address and records along with that. Does that answer your question?
If a non-custodial parent calls up and asks for, I want my grades for my child, how do we do that?
So the same way as usual, but it wouldn't have any impact. It's just this assigned address is going to be used in records in place of the residential address. So it just wouldn't have the actual address. It'd have this assigned address.
Okay.
But otherwise records would be released in the same way as they usually would.
Yeah, I can see why there's a huge need for this actually, and just some of the people and stuff that I've been worked with in the past. I am a little bit confused on often, maybe not all the time, but often in this type of a situation, it seems to me that there's also a restraining order or something in effect. And maybe it's actually outside the realm of this conversation, but I am kind of curious to better understand. Often within that, though, the address has to be given to say they can't be around this location. It's what causes the problem of why some people do not want to get a restraining order or whatever. I'm curious as to how that's going to be handled with this House bill, because obviously to say you can't go around this address and it's a state facility is not going to be serving the purpose of what that's intended for. Does my question make sense?
Yeah, your question definitely does. And I think, I mean, there are kind of these challenges of the program. And for some people, it just won't be as effective as for others, unfortunately. But so in that case, I think it would kind of be, someone needs to make a decision of, do they want that, order of protection with the address listed so that that person knows where to not go, or do they feel better about being in an anonymous place with, and then in that case, yeah, I mean, they couldn't. I think like having anything that intentionally reveals the actual address through a court document obviously kind of negates the purpose of the program. So it's a little bit of a one or the other, which would work better for a victim.
Okay, and then my other question, I guess this might be more, it sounds like it's just a logistical thing that'll have to work out at some point. And you possibly answered it, and that is when we go in to clean up our data entry, often addresses and whatnot, that's kind of where some of that stuff comes up, that we get these errors on and incorrect addresses and stuff. Seems to me that'll be something you'll be able to work out with the state regarding this specific address, zip code and whatever. So it shouldn't even be flagged because the program would be working directly with the state, correct? And like you said, you would verify just where that they're within the parameters of whatever the charter is to be attending that school. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Kara, I have a question, and
Mhm.
I apologize if this was answered, but so this request, does this come directly to the school from the family? Does it come through your organization?
Yeah, so honestly, a lot of the onus is on program participants because we have no way of knowing every interaction that they're having with a government agency. So it really is the program participants' responsibility to come and say, hey, this is this card, I'm a program participant, this is what it means. And then if there are questions, people can contact us.
Okay.
But yeah, it's unfortunately a lot of the responsibility is going to fall on program participants.
And they're going to have, and do they have an official card of some kind? You mentioned like they'll have some kind of official documentation that says that supports this request.
Yeah, they will. They'll have some official documentation with an authorization number, and that can be confirmed with us. But that'll be kind of part of their packet is, okay, you need to show this card in order to prove participation. And if someone needs further proof, they can get in touch with us to confirm. And other than kind of these special case circumstances, that's sort of, yeah, what we'll say is, yep, they're a program participant and like, what do you need their address for? And we'll try to confirm without giving the address, like, yep, they're in the right place, or, you know, they should be receiving these services from this county, et cetera. And just so kind of the bare minimum amount of information, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions, or otherwise, I think that's about all I have. And yeah, again, please feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions or concerns, or kind of think of other issues that you think might trip us up. I'm very interested in hearing input from folks who are going to be dealing with this, and, you know, any concerns you all have before we get it implemented.
Thank you,
All right,
Kara. I think this was super helpful, and at least getting it on everybody's radar, I think is really useful. So thank you. I'm sure we'll have you back to talk again. This was really great. So thank you so much, Kara.
All right. Thanks, Marie. Thanks, everyone.
We'll see ya. All right. Well, next we have Kathy Jensen here, and she's going to be talking about the professional arts outreach programs. So we will turn the time over to Kathy. And Kathy, we can see your slide. That looks great.
Thank you. It is so great to be here to share this wonderful program with you. I've listened to the rest of the meeting and am impressed with the structures and things that are in place that you must pay attention to. So I'm really pleased to talk to you about just a really excellent opportunity that there is to bring joy and beauty and arts into your schools through the professional outreach program in the schools. There are 15 wonderful professional groups in the state that, in addition to their professional venues and their professional offerings to the community, each of them has an education department that receives funding through the Utah State Legislature to bring those professional arts experiences specifically to the schools. I'd like to show you a short video from Ballet West and programs in the schools. So hopefully this, I have to skip an ad here as soon as this comes up.
Ballet West educational programs reach over 110,000 students and teachers a year. One arm of our programming is our Ballet West for Children's program. Ballet West for Children is designed to be presented within the school, which means our dancers come into their own environment, which makes it very accessible. We started initially locally, and it has expanded now to cover the entire state. That means we're in Grouse Creek, which may have 6 or 7 students, to Harvest Elementary in Lehigh with 1,200. The program covers a wide variety of topics, from training and auditioning to healthy lifestyles. We learn what it takes to partner and work together as a team. So it's short little clips delivered by the dancers themselves, so the students in the audience and the teachers get to know these dancers and their personalities, as well as what they do for an art form.
As important as the academics are, I think it's our duty as educators to include some of the education of the arts. Our goal is to have well-rounded and happy people at the end of their education.
We want all of our kids to be successful, and maybe some child there dreams of dance and is not going to get to see that anywhere else.
I enjoyed watching the faces of the children because some of them were just glowing. I think they just took away the fun, the joy of watching performances.
We see a changing of perception. We see the boys in the audience relating to the adult male dancers in a very different way. It helps break stereotypes, and it definitely highlights the athleticism that comes to dance.
We don't have any exposure to ballet or anything like that. And so some of these kids will never see a ballet. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience for them.
These outreach programs to me are just magical in the lives of these children in these small towns that are far away from Salt Lake. And not just that, but far away from their usual experiences.
So I'm not sure what I did to the video. I don't know if you saw that, but I will share this and you can show the rest of the video if needs come up. There we go. Ballet West is just one of those organizations. Utah Shakespeare Festival. They have a touring production. Last year, I went to the touring production as it performed at Syracuse Arts Academy. One of the really exciting things about that presentation was the talkback that happened after the production. They did a shortened version of a Shakespeare play, and then the actors interacted with the students in the school, answered questions, talked to them about the process. It was wonderful. Maybe some of you have had children, your own children, or students who have participated in the Shakespeare competition that is held in Cedar City. Other things are the Bard's Birthday, Playmakers, and many resources and workshops. Utah Film Center is right in the thick of Sundance as their professional group, as their education arm. They provide a children's film competition called Tumbleweeds. They do teacher workshops, teach teachers to teach students, stop motion animation, and other things like that. The Opera by Children program at Utah Festival Opera and Musical Theater is magnificent to nurture creativity in students in the elementary grades. Students in Opera by Children create their own story, their own libretto, their own melodies, and then they are supported by a cast of characters that helps them with scenery, costuming, putting a 10-minute opera on stage that is totally children written for their parents. Utah Symphony, Utah Opera. I have told this story about my own rural upbringing. I was not exposed to a lot of professional arts, and I remember the feelings that I had the first time that I heard Utah Symphony live. I could not believe that real human beings could produce that sound. I later went on to become a music teacher, and that's not, that's not typical, but the experience of seeing the Utah Symphony and Utah Opera in a professional setting can be really amazing and impactful to your students. Here is a picture. I believe this concert was Utah Symphony performing in the gym in Sevier County Schools. We also have the visual arts with the Springville Museum of Art, the Utah Museum of Fine Arts, the Museum Downtown of Contemporary Art, and a museum at Utah State as well. So there are many opportunities. I'm going to put the list of offerings that gives you the content and the grade level appropriate and the contact information for each of the organizations. I will put that link in the chat, and hopefully you will see fit to provide these opportunities to your students. And I want to let you know that I am leaving full-time at Utah State Board of Education, and my colleague Kelly Bruce Glenn will be taking over the USBE portion of POPs. And then if you have other information or questions, you can contact Randy Booth. So I am happy to answer any questions or respond to anything that you might have.
Well, Kathy, we're sad to see you go, but Kelly, we're excited to work with you. And there was just a shout out in the chat that Moab, they said our school has had numerous POPs programs. Visit us here in rural Utah. Thank you for this, USBE and the State Charter School Board, Yahoo for Arts in Schools. So lots of love for the arts. So thank you to both of you for the work, and excited to continue that program and those collaborations.
Thank you. It's our pleasure to have the professional association with the 15 organizations. And I will soon put that link in the chat.
Perfect. Okay, well, if there are any other questions, we'll leave that open for a minute. Otherwise, we'll keep moving forward, and Kelly will look forward to inviting you to future charter directors meetings. So, and thank you, Kathy, for being here today. All right, well, moving along. Next up, we have Dr. William Evans, and he is here to share a enrollment report from the State Charter School Board. So we will turn the time over to him.
Thanks, Marie. I am so glad to be here. And I'm glad that I get to follow the arts presentation, because my first announcement actually is connected to that. So last year we did our first student art competition for charter schools. The winner, let me share my screen. Screen 2. Was Kamari Pern from Mountain Heights Academy. She did this really great mosaic. We loved this. This was beautiful. So this is the piece that is gracing the cover of this year's annual report on charter school performance. We want to do another one of these. This was so great. We had so many beautiful pieces of art, and we've been putting them on our website. We've been putting them on social media and giving students as much exposure as we possibly can. And so we'd like to do another one of these. I do have a request though, and this comes based on some feedback I received from a teacher. They wanted to have a little bit more information earlier on. So what I would like to do, directors, please reach out to your art teachers if you have them. Give them my email address if they would be interested in just talking with me about how we could make this more meaningful next year. Any ideas that they have, and we're going to talk about some different things that we could probably implement to make sure that every single student that gets to or that wants to participate gets to. I'll put my email in the chat at the end of my presentation. But for right now, just congratulations to Kamari for this really, really impressive piece, and to all of the students. It really was a hard choice. We have some amazingly talented students out there. You should all be really, 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 really proud of them. The next thing that I get to talk about is enrollment. Now, if you listened to the December board meeting for the State Charter School Board, I gave this same presentation. I'm not going to go as in-depth here. That was a much larger discussion, but I wanted to share the same data with you so that you could all get a little bit of an understanding about where our mindset is and what we're looking forward to. And as you're making plans for hiring, for advertising, you can kind of, you have some good data to build it on. So first of all, a couple of things that we noticed in the data. This last year, we had really, really great growth in charter schools. In fact, it was one of our highest single growth years in a while. The pandemic gave a little bit of a hit and we dropped a little bit, but this last year, more students came to charters than they had in a long time. We also saw really positive retention rates across the board. And I think that's really important to consider. For me, this is one of the most important metrics. So retention rate is the number of students who are with you in May, who then come again in the fall. So they've been with you a year, they came back. I think the reason this is really important for me is that I see this as kind of a gauge on how parents feel about the work that you are doing, right? They're satisfied. They've come to a really convenient place. I think of it like this. If you were to try to cancel a gym membership, it would be a nightmare. But if there were a convenient space for 3 months where you didn't have to pay or be involved in that gym membership, that would be the time where you would just leave and go somewhere else. And so the fact that your students are sticking through this gap, this 3-month gap, and they're coming back to you is a really good indication that they really like what they're getting at your school. We did have stable transfer rates. They weren't as good as our retention rates, but they were stable, and that's helpful. Transfer rates, again, are a measure of the students who enrolled with you at some time during the school year and then stayed through the end. For me, that also kind of means if they're leaving a lot, or if you have a high transfer rate, it's a sign that people are just are leaving. They're not happy with what you're doing. There are problems, and you really need to kind of look at that as an internal metric of how can we do better. Now, there are other variables that speak to that, right? Students move, we get that. Different needs arise. All of those things are valid. But if you're looking at a 25% transfer rate, there's no way you can blame that on the market. That's on you guys. That's on you as the school is what I mean. So really think about that. How can we take transfer rate and make some meaningful decisions on our practice? I think it is important to look at the school as kind of a business model. We don't like that in education. We don't like thinking that we're a business, but in this case, we really are. We have a client, we have a product that we're offering, and the free market really does speak in a lot of ways. Let's look at our enrollment. So this is statewide charter school enrollment for the last, 7-8 years. Again, we had about 4,000 student increase, almost 4,000 student increase from SY22 to SY23. Pandemic hit us a little bit, but not so much that it was problematic. As we're looking towards the future, and I want to explain a little bit about projections. So if you remember in October or in September, you all received an email that said you need to go online, project what your enrollment is going to be for the next year, SY24. The state uses those projection numbers to partially determine your funding for September, October, and November. They then have all of their finances organized and figured out, and then they give you the true up day in December. So your projection does impact this year's funding, but very, very slightly. It's all reconciled within about 1 or 2 months, but it does show the state where we're going next year. Now, a couple of things that I want to make note of in this: we over projected by about 10,000 students, and the state came back time and again and made us trim that down. So if you put in a projection for 100 students over what you currently have, the state did not let us authorize that. We really had to be very, very what's the word? Not cruel, but strict and hard in how much we cut from projections this year. The legislature, in determining their funding, as they were going into this legislative session, they're anticipating only 260-ish students moving into the state. We also saw our first time, so the first time since charters were approved in Utah, we had a smaller kindergarten class entering the school year in SY23 than the graduating class that left in SY22. What that means for us is we're going to have an enrollment bubble that is moving through for the next 12 years. If you're a K-6 program right now, that's going to hit you. You're going to experience this right now. If you're a 7 through 12 program, you have 7 years to figure this out and get ready for this bubble that's coming through. But we are going to see a drop in student enrollment for this year. The other thing, so my next point, well, let me first ask, any questions up to this point? Any questions about projections or even the enrollment bubble?
William, there was just a quick question about if they wanted to see their own transfer and retention rates. And so I've plugged in the link to UCAP where they can run their own enrollment and performance reports if they wanted to get that information for their own schools.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Marie. Yeah, every one of you on your UCAP logins, you have a really good dive into how your enrollment has been going for the last, I think since 2015 is what we have data for on that on UCAP. So let's talk about our next one. So enrollment trend. This is one of the metrics we look at. This is the only metric where it is possible to have more than 100%, a figure more than 100%. That's what I meant to say. Because if you had 50 students this last year and you have 60 students this year, you have over 100%. You have 100 and what is that, 10%, 5%? So across the board, we are thrilled to see that we have a 97% average on our schools. The highest school, the highest enrollment trend was 148%. So this was a school that had a portion they enrolled that plus half of what they had before. Now we do have a few that are pretty low, 69%. I think the thing that you want to kind of consider if you have an enrollment trend below 90, 98 is, while it might not be bad this first year, if that trend persists over say 3 or 4 years, you are going to see a huge drop in your enrollment, right? That's if you, so 10%, 30% of your students could leave in 3 years, right? And that's a significant amount of your funding. So you really don't want to look at this and say, oh, we're fine, like it's just a 5% drop. Take the look as when you go on UCAP and look at what it has been over the last couple of years, because that's going to impact how much funding you get.
William, I think going back a slide or two.
Yes.
There was a question where it says, I see the authorized number of 98,898. And they asked, is this solely from projections in UCAP? What is the actual number authorized by the Utah State Charter School Board for total charter school student enrollment possible?
Great question. That number right there, that 98,898 is every school's max authorized, all put into one sum. And so that's all the schools that we were, if we took all of your enrollment, everything that you could possibly have, 98,898. Our projections were closer to 78 on the first round, or excuse me, we're closer to 88 on the first round. And so we had to cut them down closer to the 78,000. The 78,623 that you see right there is the October 1 enrollment count for all charter schools. Good question. Thank you. Couple of notes just on retention rate. I mentioned how important this is and what a great way this is to look at your school and your performance and to see how well people really like what's happening. The white line at the top is our highest school. That's the best retention rate we had in our state. Now, each figure each year was a different school, but that's just the highest retention this year. So 96% somebody retained. The gold line there in the middle is our average, 83% retention, really, really good. And then our lowest there at the bottom is 54. So that means that 46% of your students left from May to September of the following year. That's a huge cut. Now, you might be able to recruit new students and get new people in. But I think of this really, again, this is where that business mindset comes into play, and you really want to be cognizant of that, is we have a limited number of students. in Utah. And there's an even more finite number of students that are interested in your model, right? Not everybody wants to go to an art school. Not everybody wants to go to a classical ed school. Not everybody wants to go to a sports school. You have a set number of students that you can retain. And if you're turning over 54% or 46% of those every year, that's going to be real detrimental to your bottom line after 2 to 3 years. I'm going to skip this one and go to our transfer rate. Transfer rate, we have seen historically, it is all over the place, right? This white line at the top, this was our highest. So 23.7% was the highest transfer rate this year. That's not a good thing. I just want to clarify. That's problematic. We have had in the past as high as 43, but for this year, we're looking at the 23%. Now our average has stayed pretty good, right? We're about 7%. Even during the pandemic, it didn't get much higher than about 8% for the average. And then our lowest this year, 2% transfer rate. Like, good job. If it's you, you'll see it on your UCAP, and you just got to be really, really proud about that. But even during SY21, 0% transfer rate. Awesome. If you think about what we were all going through in SY21, that was our first full year of the pandemic. Absolutely chaotic, but we held strong. People stuck with us because we already knew what we were doing there. And you should all feel really, really proud about that. Now this next graph, so this is the top 10 schools and their percent of max authorized. The metric for percent of max authorized is that you get a small buffer from 100 to 103. It's not meant for you to just continue enrolling up to 103%. It's meant to be a space for you to enroll. Like, let's say you need to get a sibling in, right? But you're already at 100%. You've got that gap to get that sibling in without it causing a problem. So we give you this little gap. Our top 10 schools all were within that 100 to 103%. Great job to every one of you. You've got full enrollment. And I think the thing that, again, looking at this from a business perspective, there is a lot of certainty for you in recognizing I know my budget. It's the same budget that I've had when I wrote my application, right? I'm staying there. And so it really does take a lot of burden off of you as an administrator if your enrollment is staying stable up here. Percent of max, the bottom 10. So we did have some schools that were really low, and I did share this in the public meeting. This is where we're seeing some enrollment difficulties, and we are working with schools. We've reached out to a number of them. We're doing our own research internally to make sure we understand what is going on at the schools, because we want to make sure that you have what you need to survive and to thrive. We don't want schools to be struggling. Let me go to some observations.
May I ask a question?
Of course you may, yes.
What is considered too much on the enrollment, over enrollment?
Anything over 103%.
103, okay.
Is, yeah, so really you have 100%. There is a small grace window of that 100 to 103% where we give you that leeway. We're not going to cause any problems. But if you go over 103%, it is a problem.
So I noticed the high to 106%.
Yeah,
Are there
so that means
schools at 106%?
There are. And
Okay.
so those schools will be contacted by the SCSB staff and given plans for how they can remediate that and get back into good standing.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Floyd. Any other questions? Okay, I'll go on. Just a couple of observations. And I think I will fully admit that I am a pessimist to some extent. I I really am very happy, and I have a fun personality, but there is also a part of me that does worry about the future. And I think I do worry that sometimes we make plans thinking that things are just going to be fine. We are just in this period of growth. And I would like to just advise a little bit of caution. Take a step back for a second and say, you know, if we really are getting only 263 new students across the state, let's assume that's correct. Am I planning well for the future so that I have the right funds? Am I using my money well so that I don't have to get rid of a teacher? How can I keep my teachers? How can I make sure they're getting their salaries? How can I make sure they get their raises when they are deserving of them? So yes, we are trending upward. We have seen a growth in enrollment this year. We don't know what that means for the future. I hope it goes forward. I hope people continue to leave I don't want to say leave because we're not replacing district schools. I hope people continue to recognize that charters provide options for them. And I hope that enrollment goes up. If not, if there's a worst case scenario, are we prepared so that this doesn't hurt us down the road? Retention rates are good and they're showing signs of improving. I am so happy about this, and I hope each of you are as well. And in some cases, this really is an indication that you are being mindful of your parents as stakeholders, and you're listening to them and you're helping them to see the value that you're adding in their child's lives. Transfer rates are stable. That 7% is okay. We seem to be recruiting enough that that's not having too much of an impact. But I do want you to be mindful. If you have a transfer rate much higher than that average, it's not going to be very many years before you're going to start having trouble recruiting again. Again, there is that finite number of students to draw from. One of the questions that we brought up during the board meeting, and it's something that we talked about as we've been meeting with other authorizers nationally, is what do we really expect to see with a max authorized figure? Is it just meant to, you know, cap the school from growing too much? Is it meant to be an indicator of, you know, parental involvement, success? Like, what is it really? And so that's something that we're looking at internally, is how can we make this a meaningful metric for you so that it helps you to plan for the future? And then my last one, again, I feel like I am driving this one home a lot, but it does hit me, and it does feel like something we need to think about, is how do we better recognize as schools, as school leaders, that those students in those seats are a finite resource. If we are not providing the type of education that their parents are interested in, we are at risk of losing the only resource that is keeping us alive. So I will conclude that. Let me stop sharing. Are there any questions? Oh, goodness. Any other questions from anybody? If not, I'm going to put my email in the chat. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about enrollment. Please, please, please forward my email to your art teachers. If they can get in touch with me by, let's say, Monday, the 13th of February, that would be great. That will give me some time to make some plans, and we'll get another art competition going so that your students can showcase all the wonderful art they are working on.
William, there was a question that just came through. Do you want to take that one, or do you want me to?
Let's see. Is the board taking enrollment trends in the yes. Enrollment was a factor. If you listen to
William,
the
do you want to read that one out loud?
Oh, yes, I would be happy to. So this is from Debbie. It says, is the board taking the enrollment trends and the kindergarten bubble into account when authorizing new schools? Yes, we do take it into account. Now, if you will remember I think it's in 53G. It says that we cannot determine, we can't like deny a school application based on how that school's enrollment would affect you as a school. It won't let us do that. And so that's not something we can do, but we do look at the overall enrollment and just say, is it really likely that this school would survive, right? If a school puts in as an example, we had one school put in an application for over 900 students on their proposal in an area where there's only 3,000 people total. Right, so we gave them feedback. We're like, this is not realistic. You've got to change this. Looking at the trends, there are not 900 students for you to pull from. Come back with a better figure. So we do look at that as a variable. Thanks, Debbie. That was a great question. Any others? Okay, I just put my email in chat. It's just my name, william.evans@schools.utah.gov. Again, if any questions come up, if you would like to talk about your enrollment, please reach out to me, and I look forward to hearing from your art teachers and getting some more student art showcased.
Thank you, William. All right, next up, we have today's training topic. This is a short training because we did have a special request this afternoon to have a conversation about safe and healthy schools. So our short training was going to be by our school remediation team. However, they are out today. And so we have our support team. Lisa is actually going to be doing this training for us today. So Lisa is going to give us just a quick training going over some basics of the charter agreement. So thank you, Lisa, for filling in, and we will turn the time to her for a quick training on the charter agreement.
All right. Well, let me share my screen. That always makes me nice and anxious. So just a second. All right, Marie, does that look like what it should need? Or am I sharing?
It looks like you are sharing your presenter mode.
Your presenter mode. Okay. We will get there. I apologize, you guys. This, like I said, this always makes me so anxious. One more time. Okay. So let's get, can you see that? I know it's the.
Yeah, do you?
Okay,
Yeah.
let's go with that. Okay.
That's great. Let's do that.
Oh my goodness. Okay, one of these days I'm going to get perfect at this. All righty, here we go. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the charter agreement today. And to start off, what I thought we would share, or Liz actually provided this. So we're going to share about what a charter school is and what it is not. So first of all, a charter school is an authorized public school. It is intended to offer additional choice about where students attend school, and it is able to have, it's a school that's able to have a curricular emphasis, and it gives opportunities to try new strategies and to experiment with innovative ways of educating students. And it's an opportunity for individuals and organizations outside of the traditional education system to create and run public schools. Now, what it's not, it's not able to limit enrollment to certain kinds of students. It's not able to charge tuition. It's not a private school, and it's not free from accountability. All righty. So let's talk a little bit here about the charter contracts. The parties to the charter contract are your charter authorizer board and the charter school board. So just to make that clear, that is the school board. It's not the director, it's the school board itself. A charter school contract will be formed after the approval of the charter application. And it's formed through negotiation between this charter school board and the charter school authorizer. And the purpose of the charter contract is it's a governing document and it's accountability tool. So it's a governing document. So it's showing you how your school is going to be operated. And then it's an accountability tool between you and the authorizer as well. And the authorizer will ensure that you're holding to that charter. And it also will specify the expectations of the school. So top 8 things to do to foster a healthy relationship between your charter school board and the school, the charter school, the board of the charter school and the state charter school board. There we go. It's to know and understand your charter contract. That is so important because if you're going to operate within it, you have to be able to understand what's in it. You want to meet all your compliance and reporting requirements. You also want to engage in transparent and regular communication with your authorizer. And we are here, your authorizer is here to offer technical assistance whenever you need it. And also you want to run a great school. We want this as the charter school authorizer. They want to authorize schools that are going to be great. And we know that you guys want your school to be great as well. So that's important on both sides, that you make sure you're running a great school. And you also want to open your doors and host visitors, because that's the best way you're going to get your name out there and get people in to see just how great your school really is. And you also want to engage with your authorizer. We're here to help you with whatever you need. So please, if you have something going on or you have something you want help with, please make sure that you engage with us and let us know what you need. And always, along with that, ask questions. I always hear that the only bad question is a question that's never asked. So please feel free, no matter what the question is, we are happy to help you find a good answer to it. All right, top 5 things not to do when fostering a relationship. Don't forget to communicate. It's so important. If you have looming problems, it's really important that we know, because we can't be there to support you if we don't know what's going on. Also, if you have strategic activities going on, let us know. We'd like to help you celebrate that and yeah, we're interested in what's going on with you, the good, the bad, all of it. So please let us know. And don't avoid accountability agreements. That is so important, because you're going to get held to accountability, whether you want to make it a priority yourself, you're going to at some point have to. So please just make sure that you are holding to those accountability agreements. And don't try to do it all yourself, because like I keep saying, we are here to help you with anything that you need. You are not in this alone. We want to be there to assist you in any way we can. And don't overlook reporting. Again, so important. If you don't get it done, somebody's going to be calling, emailing, knocking, whatever it is. So it's important to make sure you're taking care of that. And please don't disparage your authorizer. It's about all the students, and we want charters to succeed in Utah. And if somebody's giving a bad name to the authorizer, that could affect all the schools, and we don't want that to happen. So please, just if there's something going on, let's chat and work it out and handle it that way. And please don't just disparage the authorizer altogether. And that is our very short training that we had, and I hope it was helpful. And thanks for letting me be a part of your day today.
Perfect. Thanks, Lisa.
Yep.
Are there any questions about that? I was telling Lisa we have about, I think 17 or 18 when we last counted, different variations of the charter agreement out in the field. So if you have questions about your specific charter agreement, please reach out to us. We're happy to walk through it with you. I'm happy to provide some of that technical assistance as Lisa was talking about. And ultimately, that is that agreement between your board and the state charter school board. And so we're happy to provide that guidance and help you understand all those components of your charter agreement. So thanks, Lisa. That was a great quick reminder of the expectations that go along with that charter agreement. Real quick before we get to our last little piece today, we do have our in case you missed it, which are just those gentle reminders and nudges of things from the State Board of Education and the State Charter School Board that you'll want to make sure you have on your radar. So from the USBE, these were all emails or announcements that came out, and just making sure that you are aware of them. There was an announcement that came out. It was a memo from DCFS and the Attorney General's office, and they wanted that to be shared with your frontline school personnel and anyone else at your LEA, and it said who may be interested or who may be affected. Just in working with DCFS and supporting your students who may be in some of those tough situations. And so please make sure that you've read that memo and shared that with the appropriate personnel at your school. If you don't have that memo or you're not sure what I'm talking about, if you reach out to us, we can just resend that email to you, or you can, the contact there is Ryan Bartlett, and he can get that sent to you as well. Also, SB 127, there was a quarterly brief sent out, and that had some early reading outcomes from the 22 legislative session. So you'll want to make sure that you've seen those. If you haven't seen that report, either Sarah Whipke or Jennifer Thronson would be your contact to get a copy of that and to just start looking over what those outcomes were as we head into our next legislative session. I don't know about you, it's only been a week, but it feels like it's been a really long legislative session already. Next, we have our Purple Star Schools. That announcement went out. Applications are now open. That is for the schools that are serving, I believe it's military students. And it's a special designation that your school can earn. If you are interested in learning more about that or becoming a Purple Star School, I know we have a few of our charters that have earned that special designation. You can, learn about that application. It's due by March 31st. And Ben Rasmussen is the one who oversees that program and would be your contact if you had questions on anything to do with the Purple Star Schools. Additionally, from the USBE, they were seeking feedback on a wellness policy, and a 10-question Google survey went out. So if you have not seen that and you would like to give some feedback on the wellness policy, Jody Parker would be the contact there so that you can give your response on the 10-question Google survey and make sure that your voice is heard. Additionally, there was some information, this one I think went out just last week, about an upcoming webinar that's talking about 504 and IDEA. And in this webinar, they were going to be discussing similarities and differences between 504s and IDEA with the laws and the policies in practice. And the contact for that is Holly Bell. And if you reach out to her, she can get you all the information so that you can attend that webinar or send individuals on your team to that webinar so that they can participate and learn all the things you need to know about that. We also wanted to make you aware from the USBE meeting, there are some new board members that have come on. In January was the big board meeting when they got sworn in. So there is some new membership on the State Board of Education. As you'll remember, that is different from the State Charter School Board. So you do have the State Charter School Board as well as the State Board of Education. The State Charter School Board has not had any changes. But the State Board of Education, that is where we've had some new members. And the State Board of Education also is under some new leadership. We have James Moss is the new chair, and then he has Molly Hart and Jenny Earl serving as 2 vice chairs. Fun fact, if you don't remember, Chair James Moss or Jim Moss, he was on the state charter school board for a few years. And so that's just kind of a fun connection that all of us have to him, that he was on the state charter school board for a few years before moving on to the State Board of Education. Another big one that we just wanted to make sure this was on your radar. We did mention it back with the report that you could get from Sarah Whipke or from Jennifer Thronson, but we have heard that this one maybe is kind of falling off of people's radar a little bit. There is a change management effort that is coming out, and this is, if you look down here, talking about the why, it's a state-funded project for leaders to support Utah's Read to Succeed initiative. It came from SB 127, so that same bill. And cohort 1 is launching this year. And it looks like by 2027, all of our school leaders will need to have participated in some professional learning. If you read on that first paragraph, it says EdDirection in partnership with USBE is excited to present a 2-year opportunity for change management, professional learning, and coaching for Utah leaders. Participation in this project, which is required for all leaders by 27, has been designed to develop leaders' capacity to drive change and is sustainable and impactful. The first cohort will kick off February 23. So just so that's on your radar, it does look like this is a required training by 2027. So definitely, if right now is not a time for that, we understand. When it talks about the who, it does say elementary principals, their supervisors, a leader from the LEA, a literacy specialist. They're all required to complete this professional learning. So looking ahead over the next few years as you're planning, making sure that you are getting this on your radar, that by 2027, there is some required professional learning that you and some of your leadership team will be required to participate in from SB 127. And then just finally from the State Charter School Board, ours are pretty quick and easy here. Our next meeting will be February 13th. We have 3 big items on our agenda for February. We are going to be doing some training about truancy. We've had a number of you request for some truancy training, so we will have that. We also have the policy project. They're the ones that did the training about the Period Project. They're going to come and talk about teen homelessness, which is the issue that they are tackling this year. And then we also have a vice chair from the State Charter School Board, Cindy Phillips, and she's going to be doing strategies for supporting teachers in your school and how to make your next year even better. And then, of course, that reminder to get your nominees in for Employee of the Month. We love to celebrate the wonderful work that's happening in your schools. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to try to answer those. Otherwise, let me see, we'll stop sharing there. I don't see any questions in chat. If there are any, please feel free to get those in or send me an email, and I'm happy to follow up or send you any other information that you might need. And
Marie.
Go ahead, Floyd. Yes, hi.
And I apologize, this was a few slides back, so I maybe you can remember, but from Sarah Wiebke and Jennifer Thronson, there was, I got the Read to Succeed in relation to HB 127, but there was also, there was a reporting, it was in the same, it was on the same slide as the DCFS AGO memo.
Yes, I've got that one pulled up. Yep.
What was the name of that training or report that they had listed
So
there? I just missed
the
it.
SB 127 quarterly brief.
Oh, quarterly brief. And what
Yep.
was that in relation to?
Early reading outcomes.
That was it. Thank you. I
You're
appreciate that.
welcome. No problem. All right.
That was it. Thanks.
You're so welcome. Well, thank you for your patience in getting through our, in case you missed it. Hopefully you didn't miss any of those and you are just on top of everything. As our wonderful directors, we know you are. And for our last bit today, we did have a special request come in from Chantel Coda and some of the assistant deputy superintendents, and they asked if we could have a conversation about safe and healthy schools. And I said, absolutely, we're always happy to chat. And so Chantel's here. I think she's going to lead out and facilitate that conversation. So we will turn the time to her. And Chantel, I'm here as well. So if you need any help or support or managing the chat, I'm here to help with that as well. So take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Maria. I appreciate your help in getting this coordinated, and I appreciate all of you and your time. I know how extremely busy you are, so I just really appreciate this time to talk about the very important topic of school safety. My name is Chantel Coda, and I'm the coordinator for Safe and Healthy Schools with the Utah State Board of Education, and am working really closely with folks that are also invested in safety, such as our school nurses, our school resource officers, our counselors, our social workers, and such. The reason I'm here to meet with you today is because we had a really good meeting with our state superintendents, and we were able to sit down with them as a group, a collective rather, and really talk to them about school safety needs and issues, and really had a nice conversation around what is working, what is not working, what some of their needs might be. And as you can imagine, they vary throughout the state because we all have different cultures and climates and needs with buildings and things of that nature. So after that conversation, and talking with Dr. Norman and Angie Stallings, we really wanted to bring this information forward to the superintendency, which we did, and had a really robust conversation there. And from there, we started to ask the question, well, what about our charter schools? How are they experiencing safety? I know that you have unique needs, and some of your buildings are quite unique as well. And so I wanted to make sure that we were including you in the conversation as well. Now that we've got kind of a lay of the land of the state, I'm curious to plug in data from each of you to understand what's happening with safety from your wheelhouse, and what does it look like for you? So what I would love to do, I have 5 distinct questions that I would love to ask. And if it's okay, Marie, I can share my screen, or I can send this with you, but I have 5 questions, and I've got a little tool called Poll Everywhere. And what I would love to do is pose each of the questions, give you some think time to submit your answers, and then have just kind of a comprehensive conversation based on some of your needs and what that looks like. And please know that these, while we certainly will look at the data, and if you want any follow-up, we will certainly follow up with you. But please know these are not publicized by any means. This really is just a way for us to collect some information as we're making plans and policies and allocating more resources to help you as well. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Will you just let me know when you're able to see that? Perfect. Okay, so you can participate in this poll in 2 ways. You can use your phone and text Chantel Coda 780-37607 to join, or you can just open a separate tab in your computer, and you can use the information there to go ahead and participate in this poll. So I'm going to activate the first question to see if you're all able to join me. And I can't see your faces. So Marie, can you just give me a verbal if you're able to see the screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Yep.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this to the full screen, and we'll give just a couple minutes for each question. So the first question is, what challenges are you currently experiencing with school safety? And again, we want to know any challenges you might be facing, whether it be things with physical safety, which might include the layout of the building, single point entry, locking or non-locking doors, and then also things that have to do with the emotional well-being of students in your school. What types of things are you experiencing there? lack of staffing, for example, is one that came up. Lack of resources, lack of understanding students in trauma. So I'll stop talking for a moment to give you some time. Great. And I love this tool because you can also see what some of your colleagues are saying as well. So perfect. Cost and availability of school nurses. Teaching students about internet safety. That's huge right now. Mental health resources. Interesting. SROs. Yep. Lots of mental health, behavioral issues. Absolutely. Funding. Lack of communication. So outside partners. Mental health, oh, staff, absolutely. That was one that really came through across the state. Extreme behaviors in students. Difficulties getting local police to respond to concerns. I saw another one there about SROs as well. Staffing shortages. Nursing, mental health staff. Non-working technology. Wow, that's a heavy lift for that SRO. Take about another minute or so on this question. I want to make sure that you've all had a chance to log in. And if any of you are having any troubles, please just let me know verbally. As I said, with Zoom, it's a little hard to see your faces. So, or let Marie know and she can let me know as well. So psychologists. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and we'll move to the next one so that we can see. Oh, grants to improve school safety are available, but reporting requirements are off-putting. Yes, we've gotten some feedback on that one as well. All right, let's go to the next question, which is, what do you feel is the most important item to focus on when considering school safety? So go ahead and enter your responses there. protecting staff, students wanting to come to school. Is our community safe from itself? Interesting. Respect and consideration with students and families. Yep, that community piece, clear protocols. Preparedness, absolutely. Prevention. Clear understanding. That common language, absolutely. Staff following protocols, roles of parents and students. Emergency response plan, absolutely. Bullying. That numbing of violence. Funding for SROs. Or partnerships. Good point. We'll take about one more minute on this one and then we'll move to the next one. These are great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate the participation. Really insightful. And we've got a ditto for the SRO funding. Hearing that loud and clear. All right, let's move on to the next question, which is what resources would be helpful when considering safety needs in your district? And feel free, I know that you brought up a couple of needs about mental health, SRO, so feel free, even if it sounds a little redundant, this is just really great data for us to have as, we're right in the middle of legislative session and advocating for the needs of all students in schools, including charters. So this is really great. SRO funding. funding, hearing a lot about funding. Simplified grant application process. Okay, we'll keep this open for about 1 more minute. Protective features. Using resources wisely, interesting. Oh. Common agreement about safety. So very helpful. Grants. I'm going to open up to the next one. Which is what has been successful. So we want to know, what are charters doing that is successful, and what can be replicated potentially across charters, or even between charters and other schools. I love you guys. Oh, I'm good to hear that. I'm glad to hear that feedback. We work really closely with them about the standard operating protocol instead of response protocol. Active shooter drills. Lots of discussion with stakeholders. This is great. Explicit teaching, absolutely. Fight Back Nation. I think that's a new one for me. I'd love to hear more about that. Okay, we'll take about 1 more minute on this one.
Chantel, also just to speak to that, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I don't know if any of our directors want to talk to that, but I was previously at a Fight Back school as well. So if nobody else wants to share, I can also talk about Fight Back Nation as well. So
Yes, I would love
I
that.
found it very positive, but if any directors want to talk about it first, I'm happy to let them share. I think it's a great program as well. So just to echo.
I appreciate that, Marie. I think if it's okay, we'll finish up this question and then, in fact, I'll do that right now because yes, I would love to hear more. And what we'll do is I'm going to go to the very last question, which includes just kind of what final thoughts do you have on safety? I'm going to activate this and keep this open while I stop sharing my screen. So have no fear, it's still open and working. But I would love just to kind of have like a final chat about things such as that, what's working, what's not working. And as you're speaking, please remember though to continue adding things onto this final one. I want to make sure that, like I said, I'm capturing all of the things that you have to share. So I'm going to go ahead and pause my share and come back to you all as we just kind of talk. So thank you so much. That information has been really, really helpful for me in terms of kind of knowing where you're at. I'm not super surprised. A lot of what you are sharing are very similar to what our other schools are sharing as well. Funding, need for SROs, mental health, and things of that nature. So I'm going to stop talking at this point. Again, please continue entering things into that last response so that we make sure that we have that information. But I'd love to just hear from you, and maybe Marie, that's a good place to start the training that you had mentioned. Maybe you could kick us off with that, or any of the directors as well.
Yeah, I don't want to speak over anyone. So if anyone else wants to talk about Fight Back Nation, I'm happy to let them start. But if not, I loved that program, so I could talk about it all day. Okay, I'll start, and then if anyone wants to add into it, how about that?
Sure.
So the Fight Back program, the Fight Back Nation and Fight Back Certified Schools, is a program Dave Acosta started, and he was like former military and had done a lot of work in basically looking at studying like different mass shootings and things, found that when people did fight back, like your chances of survival were a lot higher, and that you know, whether you chose to, however you chose to engage in like fighting back, like you at least felt like you had a chance or felt like you did something about it. And so basically him and his team would come into a school, and they would spend time working with staff and doing some professional learning, but then also doing some hands-on training, teaching you how to like disarm someone, like if they were intruding in your school with a weapon. And it was a really powerful practice, and we engaged far enough that we ended up having him come in, and like we ended up showing like our students, like, look at how like rock star your teachers are, like they can disarm a bad guy, like if he came into our classrooms, and like doing a parent night, and anyway, it was a really powerful thing for like our community. And we had a big like poster on the wall that we're like a fight back school. And I'm probably not doing it justice, but everyone said it felt so good to realize that, you know, if the unthinkable happens, we have options, right? And that we felt like empowered that we had choices if that was to occur in our community.
Thanks, Marie. I'm curious what other schools are using that. And also I saw the I Love You guys as well. Would be curious to hear about that as well.
Can I add something on the Fight Back Nation there, Marie, there? So we've been trained with the basic training and then the advanced training when they come to your specific area. And I think the biggest benefit is it gave our staff, our aides, our paraprofessionals, our certified staff, and everybody a confidence that they didn't have before. Something that they felt they could do something instead of couldn't do anything. So I think if the only thing that was accomplished was the confidence it gave them, it was well worth the training that happened, because they left the training feeling empowered that they could protect their students. So I thought that was the biggest benefit of the whole program, was just the confidence it gave them.
Interesting. Thank you. And thank you for continuing to put things in the poll. This is all just really helpful. I saw the I love you guys. Would anyone feel comfortable sharing the I love you guys and any information that you have about that? And I'll be honest, I'll have to look more into the Fight Back Nation. This is the first I'm hearing of it, so I'll do some research on that.
And there is a comment in chat that Milani just said, I wholeheartedly agree with what Marie and Errol said about Fight Back Nation. So
Will you put that in the final thoughts as well?
Yeah, I'll throw that over there for you.
I just don't want to lose any of the information I'm getting.
Gotcha. If I can also throw one more thing, just sorry, I'm not like trying to make a sales pitch for Fight Back, but one thing I loved when he came and did the assembly for the kids, it was really fun to see how he would make it age appropriate too for the students. So like with our elementary kids, it was talking about like a river and how like a river is not inherently dangerous, but if you're in a river, like when it's snowfall and it's like really fast and you know it can be dangerous, just the same that like school's not dangerous, but you know, like if a bad guy comes to our school, or, you know, versus then like a middle school conversation, like it just took a very different turn. And so it was very good to see like how well put together they were and how they really had thought of like being age appropriate. And I think like Errol said too, just the confidence just in the whole building with our parents, with our students, with our teachers and our aides. So it was really a cool program. So.
Thanks, Marie. What else? What else do I need to know about charters or that would be helpful? As like I said, I process this information and we think of ways to help support you all as you're out in the field with, you know, boots on the ground doing the work. I've seen a couple things come through on SROs. I've seen some that schools want more funding for SROs. And then I saw a comment that not all schools need SROs. Is there anyone that wants to maybe elaborate on that piece of it? How are SROs helpful? Maybe how has that not been as helpful or needed maybe? Good, seeing more come through on the poll as well. And that's okay if you're more comfortable sharing it on the poll, that this is all great information to have as well.
Just to comment, I can see a need for an SRO, especially as the future kind of creeps upon us with increased violence. I don't think that it's not going to go down. I think we're only probably going to see an increase as the future comes upon us. So do district schools currently get supplemental help with their SROs, or are districts basically on their own to get that, to pay for those SROs?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It is district funded. You'll notice there are a couple of there's one bill particularly that talks about school safety, and it's a House Bill 61, and they are talking about providing SROs and what that could look like, and the issue of funding has come back around to that one again. So I'm following that one to see if that impacts any of the conversation around funding. But to answer your question, currently funding is maintained through the district partnership.
So with that, is that new funding, that House Bill 61, is that kind of a new item? Because it's hard to see the legislature coming around to funding SROs when there are so many other issues on the table, and school safety doesn't seem to be really a priority to the legislature.
We have a great question. We have a couple of bills that are kind of puttering their way through. So that's the first one. There's another that talks about school safety academies. Let's see if I can get the bill number for you here. And so, we're all curious to see where they go and how far they go in terms of school safety. But I will say there's been a lot of interest in talking with the School Safety Center and USBE from legislation around, what's currently happening and what can be done. So I'm kind of in that same boat as you are, just watching to see what ones make it through and what ones do not. The one that I just mentioned is still in, I believe it's in the Criminal Justice Committee, and so it has not been approved. It's still in that review state. Thank you so much.
I'll share a little bit about SROs. Down in Moab, the city police force and the district have funded an SRO, and they do allow him to come to our school. But he also is a detective, and we hardly ever see him. The schools hardly ever see him. He spends most of his time dealing with, honestly, middle school discipline. When he comes here, he says the middle school sucks almost all of his time. That he hasn't received SRO training. He's just a police officer that is designated as such. So the feedback, though, that I want to say is that it doesn't matter if for us that he has all of that training. What matters is that our kids are developing a relationship with law enforcement. I have had numerous parents. We have very, very high number of families with parents that have been incarcerated or currently incarcerated. And those parents are even thanking us for allowing the police officer to come in and speak with their children. So it does have an impact, no matter how small. It makes a big difference. So whatever we can do to help keep funding this stuff, I would love to have him hear more. But little thoughts from Moab.
I appreciate that, Carrie. If you haven't already, I would love if you could put something in the poll about the relationship piece. I think that is a conversation that's really important as well. And I'm putting House Bill 61 in the chat just for your reference as well, since we talked about that. Well, Marie, this has been really helpful. I know I've got a few more minutes, but I only want to take the time that's necessary to move the conversation forward. So I'm happy to leave this last question open, for even like 15, 20 more minutes as people are, still kind of thinking about things, if that's helpful. I'm happy to stay on as well. But I just wanted to thank everyone for your feedback. And if this is helpful and you'd ever like to invite us back, myself or the School Safety Center, very happy to come and talk with you or provide professional learning or just even a conversation around things that are happening at your school and problem solve with you as well. So just let us know.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. I believe we're having one of your teammates on next month about truancy. So that will
Perfect.
be super helpful too. So thank you everyone for engaging in this important conversation. I think like Chantel said, she'll stay on, I'll stay on too if you want to talk or have any other questions. Otherwise, have a great rest of the day and we'll get you out of here a half hour early. So what day is it? Monday. Happy Monday. Have a wonderful day, everyone. We'll see you later.